You just saw that.
I hate that text message. I hate that one more than anything else.
All right. Let's call
What, my text message?
meeting
That's
to
when you
order.
say a word you make.
I got Mario cards.
I like that.
Kurt hates it. Oh, he gets mad when he
It's
goes
when your
off.
husband texts you, what's for dinner?
Okay, guys, I just called the meeting to order. I'm not
Sorry.
pounding the gavel.
Okay. So if you take a look, agendas there in front of you, along with a lot of attachments either online or a stack in front. So let's move down along. Program presentations tonight. We've asked Mrs. Delby to present just her responsibilities. So she's the first one on the agenda.
All right, that's just, I'm going. So I supervise the special education teachers, do their observations. I review the state and federal regulations to ensure that we're all in compliance with all our special education paperwork, behavior, least restrictive environment, whatever we need. I monitor the special education and gifted timelines, so I look at the reevaluation and IEPs, make sure that they're done yearly, the gifted written reports and gifted IEPs. I have to review all the evaluation reports, reevaluation reports, individual education programs, the NOREPs, the gifted written reports, gifted individual education programs, and access billing. And then I write all the 504 plans for the individual students in our district. I have to attend all the special education meetings, so that includes IEP meetings in the district and outside the district, gifted meetings, parent requested meetings, and 504 meetings, and then any other meetings that they need me to attend, the MTSS meetings or the SAP meetings. I visit classrooms to observe students or teachers, providing them feedback. I help develop specific problem-solving ideas, provide guidance to special education teachers through their IEP development, IEP revisions, positive behavior support plans. I assist and guide placement options for students within the district and outside the district. Communication with outside placement staff, parents, teachers, students, the administrative team, and related service providers. And then I contact Tri-County to set up transportation for special education students. And then these are the requirements from the Pennsylvania Department of Education. So PASA testing, I have to create the rosters and make sure that all the training is done for the students. This is the alternative assessment given to the PSSA. Restraint reporting is done quarterly. Special education plan is done every 3 years. Compliance monitoring every 6 years. Indicator 14, which is transition, is done every 5 years, and all 3 of those were this year. So, and then child count there's different child count that I have to do through deaf and blind, and then just the normal December child count. So, and then I didn't do a slide, but there's every little thing that whatever anybody needs during the day. If a student's having a behavior and they need some help, they can call and I will go help. Any questions for me?
Mrs. Delby, do you just want to share rough counts of IEPs, GIPs, and 504s?
We have a total of 162 special education students, and we have, I don't know the exact number of 504, but it's probably 25 to 30, and gifted is probably 14 to 15 through the district.
Is that a high percentage of students given the other schools?
No, we are about the same as within according to our student population, we are about the same as the neighboring districts. We did good on our compliance monitoring also. Haven't gotten the official report back, but just tiny little things that we need to fix. So I was pretty happy about all that.
Other questions from Mrs. Delby? Okay. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay, moving along. Nothing under negotiations this evening. Under Curriculum 5A, and there's an attachment asking you next week to approve dual enrollment agreement with Mount Aloysius for the next school year. So that's a typical agreement that we've done every year in the past. That's $65 per credit. And if you go to the very last page, those are the courses in which they will offer dual enrollment. And we'll get to the Penn Highlands one eventually, but the Mount Aloysius one's ready. So we're going to ask you for approval next week. Questions with that one? Also under curriculum, approve agreement with CAMCO. So they provide physical and occupational therapy to our special ed students or anyone that needs physical or occupational therapy. If you take a look at that agreement, it's under 5B. Cost for CAMCO services is $62 an hour. So you can certainly read all the language at your leisure, but the identified amount per hour is on page 3 of that packet of 5B. Any questions on that one? Okay. Moving along to budget and finance. A couple renewals coming up that's in line for next year. First is Ad Menton, and that is 6A is your attachment. That has to do with all of our Study Island online. High school cost, you can see there is $4,331, and for elementary use of Study Island, $825. So total approval for next week is $5,156. Questions, comments? Next renewal is Renaissance. If you take a look at it, that's for our accelerated reader program, and that is $3,234 in each building. And again, that is our online accelerated reader. Questions on that one? Again, that's for next school year. Okay. Next, going to 6C, also attachment. You can see that is for Acadience. That's Acadience Math and Acadience Reading at the elementary. Total cost for next year, $3,260.25. Questions, concerns? Okay. 6D, approve ICTC budget for next year. Certainly a large attachment, but I'm going to call your attention to page 4 of 23. Take some time to explain. So overall increase at ICTC budget for next year is 2.3%. If you take a look at our line on that graph at the top, you'll see that calculations are based on a 3-year average of enrollment and then also membership. You can see that our share comes out to be $339,210. We then, if you see that column, it says Penns Manor allocation, purchase line allocation. Just want to remind you that the reason those two columns are there is that Penns Manor and purchase line joined as members to the ICTC late, and so for us, along with purchase line to join, there was a fee for that. So you can see why we're plus the $47,772, where then that money is taken and divided back over to the other districts to help them. And then when you get to purchase line, you can see their cost of 51 is then divided out over the other districts also. So total share, operating budget of our share will be $382,287. That is a decrease for us because of our average daily membership and enrollment formula. So it's a decrease of $14,410, or a decrease of 3.63%. You should also know the second to the last column, districts receive vocational funding in addition to basic ed funding for vocational students. So we would be getting $57,072 in vocational funding. So when all that's said and done, cost for Penns Manor for next year is $325,215. Any Again, although it's an increase overall for the operation of the ICTC, we're seeing decreased based on our enrollment and membership there.
How many kids do we have going there?
So you can see there over a 3-year period that we're averaging 38, but I will tell you that there's been 1 year that we had 42, then we had 37, so it goes anywhere in that range. And students get to go. We do have selection, I shouldn't say a selection process, but there are certain criteria. So if someone has a discipline record that's through the roof, by all means, we don't recommend for them to go, simply because of behavior. But otherwise, if they are seeking out a vocational program, they go. Questions on ICTC budget? Okay. 6D, Mr. Hughes is asking for a lump sum request to be paid at the end of the school year. Next, our budget for 22-23. I have 1-page summary for you this evening. If you want to take a look. This is just a summary, and the committee will obviously be working at this in the next 2 months, but follow along with me. Our proposed revenues for the upcoming school year is $19,607,208. Proposed expenditures is $19,545,496. That gives a proposed result of $61,712 to the good. Okay. Now, when I say that, you have to take into account the next bullet. That proposed budget includes one-time federal grant funds related to COVID of $905,871 to offset regular reoccurring general expenditures. So if you really pulled those extra federal dollars out, our true deficit budget would be $890,159, which is a major deficit. And just so that the rest of you know, I've been talking to the committee, and that's a major deficit that we have not experienced that high in the past. I clearly hear from the committee that it's a recommendation of the committee not to come to the rest of you to increase property taxes. So what that does is it takes a look at myself looking administrative-wise, looking at programs. So with that said, I want to preface this by saying that if you look at the enrollment for our district, we have the lowest enrollment in the county. That enrollment trend has been dropping for the past 10 years. The projected number in 2027 puts us at approximately 675 students. So that's a big drop over the next handful of years with our enrollment. So it'll be my job to come up with what's the best programming look like for a district that's down the road at 675 students. So over the next few weeks, I'll work with the Budget and Finance Committee to look at those. I will clearly tell you that when you have a deficit of $890,000, we will definitely look at programming. We will look at resources and support services that we currently have in order to balance that to an acceptable balanced budget. So with that said, committee met right prior to this meeting. We'd like to have another meeting April 19th at 6:30, and we would like all board members to come to that. At that point in time, I'll be presenting to you programs that we would take a look at right sizing to enrollment first, and then we'd be looking at also cutting programs or looking at needs based on student enrollments to that point that we come up with a scenario where we're not jeopardizing program, but if we get to a complete balance, it may affect programs. So that will be my goal the next 2 weeks to get that ready so that I can present to you, and that's why we'd want as many that could come to that April 19th at 6:30.
Questions, comments, or anyone else from the committee want to, anything that I missed or added, need to add?
What are the average class sizes there?
So we have anywhere from a grade of 47 to a grade that has 69.
So the smallest is 47, the largest is 69.
Yes. Any other things that you want in the next 2 weeks that you're just thinking in your head, and you may want to wait till I'm presenting, but if there's things that you would say, hey, I would want to know on that April 19th as we're having discussion, if there's backup data or information, please text me, send me an email, because I want to have as much information there for you when we're going through all that. Questions, comments? Okay. And again, just to remind everyone, in May, we want to approve tentative budget. In June, we have to approve final budget. You don't have to approve the final budget at the June board meeting, but you have to have it passed before the last day of June. So just want to remind everyone of that. Questions, comments? Okay. Next, moving to buildings and grounds. 7A, approve agreement with Raimondo Restoration Incorporated to complete wall repair and sealant application. You do have a handout that's there. So let me explain. I think we talked about this last month, but then we did talk about the second portion that's on this attachment. So we have two different locations. One is at the high school, at the auditorium wall, just right out, if you look out the window, wall facing 403, wall facing this direction, that's above the first level. And then we also have the same some footage that we want to do with the elementary school. And what we were wanting to do in those locations is repoint mortar joints, and then also put a sealant over that whole wall to keep moisture from coming in. So just so that you're all aware, a couple of situations at the elementary school where paint has bubbled on walls due to moisture. Also at the high school, water has come in and has come down the hallway walls. It's discolored ceiling tile. Also, in a couple situations when it was a hard rain, it even left puddles on the floor. So, recommendation that we move forward to have that completed. I will tell you this, one other option that we looked at was also, if you can see out that window, if you're looking out that direction, you see the wall. You'll see also a big grate, 2 grates in that wall. Another option for another approximately $11,000 would be to remove those grates, brick that up, and then also stain that entire wall so that it was the same color. Okay? So I've had questions of, well, that's sort of cosmetic. Also, Mr. Rainey had asked me, he said, well, can we just make sure, what's your thoughts on that grate? So I talked with Mark. What was done is that grate used to go into a big channel, and that was our air unit. So when we went through the energy savings project, that was all dismantled on the inside, leaving that grate. Insulation was placed there, plus metal sheeting, am I correct? Correct. So that's what's on the back of that. So if you were to ask us, does that work? Our answer is yes, that works. But I also can't sit here and tell you that as a superintendent, I can guarantee that that setup wouldn't leak within the next 10 years, which 8 to 10 years I think is what the sealant's guaranteed for, am I correct?
Correct.
So I don't want to lead someone astray to say that, okay, that starts leaking at some point. I just want you to know that what's done, what's there, we're told that works, it is working, but I also don't want you to not know all that. So at this point, the recommendation is to do the high school portion exterior wall, the elementary exterior portion wall. The cost at the high school would be $14,800. Cost at the elementary is $13,900. That does put us over the amount, but that's through CoStars, so we do not need to place that out for bid. And that would also come out of capital reserve if it's approved.
I would say that I don't know if you're familiar with Raimondo and the work that they do, but they've been around a long time. mean, they've got a great reputation for the work that they do. I don't know if they're from Greensburg area, Mark, or wherever, but they've been around.
Greensburg's in that area.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you want to add anything too, Mark. I don't mean to.
Well, that pretty much covers what we talked about, Matt. It's just that with the question of that growth, now would be the time that we're going to do it, to take care of it, instead of waiting, because if something happens, then we'll have to reseal the bulk.
That was my question, Mark, that I was asking today. And I responded in an email, is, you know, if we have concerns that, you know, what we're gonna do is gonna fix that problem, but that problem may resurface if, it might not be tomorrow, and it might not be within the next year or two, but if that eventually may cause us an issue while we're up there doing the work, we should do it. And my thought would be, if it's just for cosmetics and we want the building to look a certain way, then we're trying to figure out $890,000. I mean, it's a little chunk, it's 11,000, but if we're up there doing the work, and if we have any concern that may create issues for us down the road where we're gonna have to redo work that we're paying to get done now, then it's not, in my mind, 11,000 isn't, it's a lot, but it's not a lot. So that's kind of what I was looking for you to kind of tell us, like,
Well, anytime you have an opening that you're not using in the building,
can create problems.
that gives me a concern.
Right.
You know, so there's 2 openings up there that are not being used, and, you know, at this point, you could have birds in 6 built nests, it could crack, you know, because it's just, before it was used every day, now it's not used at all. So, you know, that's why I have that other quote on there, you know, to bring up, but at the same time, I had to get the quote to get the etching of the brick to match, because then we'd have wind up with having 3 different colors of brick so.
What he's referring to is Buildings and Grounds got an email that had an additional, besides these two, the other that would cost about $11,000 to get the grates removed, brick, and then also stain it the same color. So what I'm getting at is that if we do the top one on the sheet that you see and don't take care of that, so now we're fixing the mortar joints, putting the seal coat on, and then in 2 years, there you are. So you put the seal coat on, you're gonna have to get that off some way to stain, and then, so it gets to,
So after listening to Jody and you describe it that way, I'm kind of leaning towards, if you have to fix it now.
Well, I don't want it to be 2 years, why didn't we know about this then?
If you're, what I'm hearing, Mark, is it isn't a question of if, it's a question of when.
What was that possibility?
Right. I'm kind of like that. We're already up there, we're already doing the work. And the sad part is if something does go wrong in 2 years or 3 years, not only is it going to be more than 11,000 at that point, it's also going to cost us extra because we're going to have to reseal everything that we just paid to have sealed this year, if we go that way. I would think let's just take care of it, and then we don't have to think about it or talk about it. And I'm sure that they warranty their work to some degree, I would think.
No doubt about that.
Yeah, so we do have an issue that
They've been in business for, I think, close to 50 years. And
there's a reason why, because they do it right.
I feel the same.
what I will do, since you don't see that other portion, I will email that out either tonight or tomorrow morning so you can see what that other is. It amounts to about another 11.
Is everybody okay with that?
I'd rather spend that now than pay twice as much 2 years from now.
Okay. That is what we will do. I will get the revised part out to you. Okay, next, moving to athletics, approve athletic trainer agreement with NovaCare. You can see the agreement that's there. I've asked for an updated because you can see on the very last page what they ended up sending me was, well, wait a minute, we're going to give you a 2-year option. So I've asked for a full written one in that version. Just so you know, total cost, if we went with 1 year, you can see there is $44,000. That is a $3,500 increase from the year we're in, okay? Then you can see there, they're offering the second year option for another $1,500, which would take us to $45,500. So again, next year would be 44, the following year would be 45.5. And it would be my recommendation to go ahead and do that unless someone's objecting.
They're only giving us a 2-year.
Yep, that's all they offered out. They only gave us a 1, and then I got an email later that said, well, wait a minute. And then I asked for a whole rewritten version that I have not received yet. Because
I mean, for anybody that's been around any of the sports programs, it's the person, the person that takes care of this. And she spends more hours than I'm sure that's on here. It's hard to find a person like the one we have.
sure.
I mean, she's a pretty special person.
And I'd say too, NovaCare, that's who I'm familiar with.
There's not a problem with that. So.
Yeah, they're very good about having the school have some input on who that person is, and they'll help really anybody. They're not like, well, you're not an athlete. No,
True.
we'll help you out.
Oh yeah, Amber goes running to the opposite team quite a bit.
And that's the way their company operates.
Okay, questions? Okay, 8B, still looking for a head volleyball coach, and I know we're creeping up, and I've been having conversations, but I still have no one to bring to the athletic committee to say, hey, I have a recommendation or someone for us to interview. So I just want to remind everyone, please communicate, talk, and help in that direction. Okay? Next, transportation has some drivers listed there to approve. And then moving to 10, technology and special projects. Have an agreement, 10A, for us to do the purchase that we've been doing the last couple of years, and that's the new set of Chromebooks. Mr. Gramling has in his budget currently that we're in to purchase those 220 Chromebooks. And Dave, go ahead and describe and remind me the grades that get the new and how we cycle through all those.
So we replace kindergartens every year, and so then they advance along with them. Then 5th grade and 9th grade get new Chromebooks. So every 4 years we cycle the Chromebooks out, and those ones that have been replaced then are brought back to the tech department for loaners and to part out. And of course, if a student destroys theirs and they're a year or two away from those grades that are being replaced, we give them one of those instead, a lot of times, to save having to completely part out or purchase a new Chromebook. So even though we do replace them after the 4 years, we are still getting another year of usage out of the older ones, and that's our intention going forward, as well as to continue to utilize that same system, replace every 4, and use as loaners and parts for the 5th year.
Okay. So if you look at page 2, he has listed 120, and then are you going for option 1 or option 2 for those choices for the touch screen?
The G3, I think that's option 1.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. So 170 Chromebooks purchased, along with down at the bottom, I guess that's probably licensed $31 a piece.
Yes. The every Chromebook requires a license through Google. So for every Chromebook you buy, you need to have a license. $31 is pretty much the going rate on that. The reason for the 2 types of Chromebooks is for kindergarteners, we give them touch screens. They don't quite have the usage of the touchpad. We find that up to about 3rd grade, they like to have the touch screen. So we've been purchasing touch screens for the kindergarten kids, which then gives them touch screens from kindergarten. Well, K4 has a touchscreens in their cart as well, but kindergarten through 4th grade. And then 5th grade, they are replaced with a non-touch variant, which is a little bit cheaper.
The option B is rugged, does that mean just a heavier?
So, option B is the newest version of the touchscreen Chromebooks. So, we've been trying. A few years ago, Google introduced an expiration date, and what that means is once you hit that expiration date, your Chromebook doesn't just magically stop working, but it stops getting updates. Google will stop giving updates. So when they did that, I have started to look at the latest model. We always have purchased a year back in the past, but once they introduced that expiration date could be 4 or 5 years down the road. So when I had this quoted out, I said, well, give me the latest version. That's the latest version of that model, option 2. But as you can see, there is a huge price difference between the current year model and last year's model. So then I had to look at the expiration date. The expiration date is 2028. So we're okay to go ahead with buying that previous model because we'll still be in good for the 4 or 5 years with the expiration date. So just a comparison to that expiration date, like the seniors this year currently have expired Chromebooks, and they're working fine for them, except on one of the tests that we sent out from the district, some of the seniors weren't able to take it because they weren't able to get the latest update. So that's why I kind of keep an eye on those expiration dates to make sure that anything we buy is going to last us and not go out of date in that time period.
Questions, thoughts? Okay. Not move to the next. Approved copier agreement for color copier to be in the elementary office. If you take a look, cost for that printer would be $157 per month, and that would be for 48 months. So if you want to talk about what your plan is, why we're doing that?
So the plan is there's an existing black and white copier in that location that is out of lease, and we are now doing a month-to-month agreement on it. The plan is to replace it with a color unit, and though it's a few dollars more per month, the goal is to then make that the only color printer in the elementary school. Right now we have a color printer in 3 other locations. One of those is extremely high volume color. This isn't what they call an all-you-can-eat plan. You can print as much color and will never pay more. Right now the district is operating with and we're year to year on our print management agreement, and we get a pull of color prints every quarter, and once we go over that, we're billed for the overages, and pretty hefty for each page over, so we try to keep under that, but at least 2 quarters we usually go over and have to pay overages. So the goal is to not only have only the one color printer in the elementary school, then to go back in December, renegotiate that print management contract to lower that cost, and maybe at that time we would do a color copier in the high school to then eliminate all color copying under that print management contract to save that money, because most of that cost is driven by the color pages. Black and white is not much, and our big copiers do the majority of our black and white, and that's all you can eat as well. So we're going a little bit more on this printer to then get rid of that print management contract to save money there. So.
Questions or comments for Dave? Okay, thanks, Dave. Okay, next, public relations, nothing under it. Policies, all the changes in policies, I'm not going to read every policy, but I would ask you to take a look at the summary sheet that has 12B on it. And these are recommendations coming from PSBA, so I'm just going to sort of read down through them so you get a gist of what those changes are. First is Policy 218, Student Discipline. Language regarding off-campus activities was revised to clarify the circumstances under which the Code of Student Conduct and Board Policy applies to student behavior that occurs both on and off campus. So such circumstances include off-campus. So they now we do have a little bit of teeth, so to speak, into things that happen off-campus if it is anything to do with any of the bullets that are listed there. So that policy will reflect that. In addition to the revisions to the off-campus activity language, this policy was also updated to include the language on reports to the threat assessment team, and as well as the option of practices that we can use that's spelled out in that policy when we do have violation of student conduct. So that's the revisions in 218. You do have 218. Remember, when you take a look at it, what's in bold are the revisions in your policy. I won't go over there and read that whole policy, but that's what's, anything you see bold, that's the changes. And then, of course, there is an administrative regulation that goes with 218, simply just spelling out with administrators. One of the things, now that we're putting this in place, I'll certainly probably have to have Carl Beard come in to us as administrative team to say, okay, what is that line? You can see the bullets, the things that we can look at now, but it's still advised and part of the admin regulation that we would train administrators to say, well, what is those things on the outside that causes the bullets that's there in policy 218 that can be a factor weighing in on discipline. Going to the next page of that summary, policy 220. That title of policy 220 has been changed from student expression / distribution and posting of materials to student expression / dissemination of materials. And terminology in the section heading throughout the policy were updated to address changes. Policy now defines dissemination as a term that includes both distribution and posting, so that's why the change is there. And again, policy was revised to more clearly outline instances of student expression that would be subject to the limitations, prohibitions, and requirements of the policy. Those you can see in number 1, 2, and 3. New language incorporated into the policy regarding the training of staff involved in reviewing the requests for dissemination. In a nutshell, basically what we have been doing is that if somebody wants to post something, and particularly it happens in the high school, very rarely in the elementary. So if anything wants to be posted, goes to the administrator approves it, initials off, puts a date, because part of the policy is that within 10 days that's dated and it's initialed. Cleaners or anybody of authority in the building can take those down just for cleaning purposes. So that's part of the stipulation there. And then 220 also has an attachment that's revised by removing the definitions that are reflected in the policy, the whole dissemination portion. And then policy 227, controlled substance paraphernalia. Again, the whole comments of off-campus wording from 218 reflects into policy 227. And going to the next page, I am going to put a hold on policy 237 until I talk with the administrative group, because that policy has to do with devices and use of devices during the school day. And so I want to have a full discussion with them before, so that'll be delayed a month because I want their input. I mean, I know they've beat me up, and I always talk about the other side of the coin. So we'll have more discussion at an admin meeting before we bring that to you, because prime example is you've got to make a decision. Are you going to make a statement in your policy that they can't be used, or are we going to put in policy that it can be used except for in certain situations? So I want to have that discussion with them and then bring it to you the next month. So you will not see policy 237. We'll hold that. And then the last one is policy 808, 8, which has to do with food services. So there was a statement, but now it's being audited. The audit in the past, schools that have been audited recently schools were informed that the language of saying that if a student had more than $50 debt, that you gave them an alternative lunch, can't do that. Violation that's stated there. Let me get to that point. The PA Department, the audit informed school entities that such language is in violation of the federal USDA regulations, although the alternative meal provision were added to the PA school code under Act 16. PDE revision of food and nutrition issued a memo regarding revised meals for students. So, in other words, can't tell them that they can't have a meal, and you are not to be, our policy is that students, unless they're in grades 9 through 12, can't even be approached with it, that it has to be us, the parent and guardian. Questions, comments?
So the alternative meal was, instead of a meal, perhaps a peanut butter sandwich or something?
Can't do that anymore.
But we can take action to collect them.
Oh, yeah.
The
Oh, yeah.
fines. It's
Absolutely.
not.
Yep. Yep.
So I was gonna say, I'd
Yep.
come up and eat and just not pay you. Right?
Yeah. Well, and it's been free. Just got to remind
Yeah.
everyone, it still currently is free, and there's talks to even make it even free yet one more year. So, but policy changes are there. Questions or comments on any of those? Okay. Next, moving along down to new business. Okay. Also, you have an attachment, Canton Driving School. Not sure whether it's in mine. And that's asking for another year service, same amount for behind the wheel, $195, and the students are charged a $50 fee. Questions or comments on that?
We still pleased?
Yeah, I haven't had any complaints since we did the whole idea of it has to start here and end here, and that there's no more. We're going to meet off site location to get started and end. I haven't had any complaints.
I still like John Satilla's thing. If he can teach them to go in and out of sheets without having an accident, it's not such a bad thing. Huh?
Accidents and sheets working.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you can survive that, you're good. You pass. Okay. 14B, have a request and credits have been verified to advance Ms. Decker on the pay scale. So we will take care of that in the motion next week. 14C, approve band volunteer Courtney Kazemchek. So we'll have a motion for that. 14D, approve elementary art teacher mentor, and we'll talk about that recommendation in executive session. 14E through, let's say, I. Those all have to do with giving us permission to hire extended school year teachers and instructional assistants, hiring the summer high school credit recovery teacher, hiring the elementary learning camp teachers, and IAs. So we'll have motions for those next week. 14J, we'll have a motion next week to accept the resignation of Mrs. Rohrbaugh as Secretary B, and that is due to her retirement. Next, 14K, request for an unpaid leave. We'll talk about that in executive session. 3 days requested there. And then 14L, approve outside student placement for a student. We'll talk more specifically about that in executive session. 14M, approve an unpaid leave for maternity leave based on PMEA's CBEA. So we'll discuss that. And then approve substitutes for next to be approved. I need you to add Chris Kirsch as IA. She'll be on agenda to approve also.
She just returned.
She retired, but she's wanting to come back and do some help.
Who's this Johnson fella?
I don't know.
Slippery case.
birthday.
God, you're getting old.
I am. That's for sure. For sure. That's all I have for open meeting unless we do have a couple things executive.
Okay, let's take 5 minutes and then we'll have executive session, right?
Yeah. If you want 5 minutes, I don't have to have 5 minutes. If you want.
No, okay, I didn't know if anyone had to leave or not.
Anybody need to step out? 'Cause I can go right into it.
Go ahead.